I'm sorry to inform you, but your loved one has been found deceased. These are the words that we never want to hear, but sadly, for friends and family alike, this happens all too often. And in 10% of cases, we will never know who actually committed the crime. Today, we look at 6 cases that the Victorian police are still trying to solve. Nanette Ellis, 41. She was an advertising manager for the Free Press local newspaper. She was brutally attacked and killed in her family home in Byrnes on February 10th, 1984. And despite over 38 years of investigation, the motive for her murder remains unknown. Miss Ellis was a friendly single mother who had no known criminal associates and was well liked by those who knew her. On the day of her murder, she went to work as usual and made plans to go out for dinner with some work colleagues that evening. She was last seen pulling into a driveway around 5:15 p.m. by passers-by. After entering her home, she was brutally attacked by an unknown offender, possibly more. She was stabbed multiple times and her body was discovered at the rear of her family home shortly after 6 p.m. by her 16-year-old son Greg, who at the time was at a neighbour's house watching television. Despite processing over 800 pieces of information, the homicide squad has not been able to identify any suspects or even a motive in this murder. In the days leading up to her death, Ms. Ellis' car was subject to a series of rock-throwing attacks while she was driving to and from work. Other vehicles in the area were also damaged in the same way around the same time. Following the rock-throwing incidents, her car was vandalised in her driveway, with paint being poured all over it. Her tyres were slashed, and the radio antenna and her number plate were both removed. Local police investigated these incidents, but no suspects were ever identified, and no clear link was established between the attacks on her car and the murder. In 1985, a reward of $50,000 was announced for any information leading to the arrest or conviction of those responsible. Unfortunately, the reward did not yield any results, and in hopes of encouraging someone to come forward with crucial information, the reward had been increased up to $500,000. Homicide Detective Bailey stated that 38 years is a long time for someone to carry that type of information with them. We hope that increasing this reward will encourage that person to come forward. On October 4th, 1991, Melinda Freeman, a 27-year-old woman, was tragically found dead in her Whittlesea home by her husband. The couple had attended a family reunion earlier that day to welcome Melinda's sister back from overseas. Upon returning home, her husband took their baby son to allow Melinda time to study. When he returned at 11:30 p.m. that night, he found that the front door was wide open and his wife's body was laying up on the top story landing. The house has been ransacked and Melinda had been brutally bashed to death. It appeared that the young mother was struck repeatedly, but with so much force that she may have died on the first blow. Blood sprayed onto the walls, onto the ceiling, and even down the stairs to the couch. Her left ear was cut from the blows to her skull, and her skull was smashed. A post-mortem would reveal that she had died from a traumatic brain injury inflicted by the crushing blows. Despite a significant investigation for over 30 years, the police have still been unable to determine Melinda's final moments that night and the events that lead to her murder. Homicide Squad Inspector Dean Thompson stated, "As much as this is about holding those responsible to account, Melinda's family deserves answers into why this happened. Her young son has grown without a mother, and he has had to live with the tragedy and feel the loss every single day." In 2018, the police received an anonymous tip about Melinda's death, which has sparked renewed interest in the case. The Homicide Squad detectives want to speak to the person who had submitted this information and have appealed for them to come forward. Inspector Thompson stated, "We are really keen to speak to this person who submitted this anonymous information in 2018. People's circumstances can change over the years, and someone who may not have wanted to provide information to the police previously may now feel that they are ready to do so." The The police are offering a $1 million reward for any information that can lead to an arrest and conviction of those responsible for Melinda's death. This case has remained unsolved for over 3 decades, and the police hope that this reward will encourage someone to come forward with crucial information that could finally bring closure to Melinda's family and justice for her death. On Sunday, 1st of March 1992, around noon, a friend drove 25-year-old Michelle Brown from her home in Baxter to another friend's house in Frankston. She would stay there until around 7 p.m, when her and one of her female friends walked to the Food Plus store located on Frankston Dandenong Road, which was around a 5-minute walk away. After borrowing 30 cents from her friend to make a phone call to her brother, Michelle's friend left her at the Food Plus store and made her way home. Michelle was last seen walking away from the store between 7 and 7:15. It's unclear how she travelled, but she managed to get to the Frankston railway station, which is approximately 4 kilometres away. Between 8 and 9 p.m, a taxi driver reported seeing a woman resembling Michelle near the phone boxes near the Frankston railway station. Michelle's mother arrived at the station shortly after 8 p.m, but could not locate her daughter. A witness living near Payne Street in Frankston heard 2 screams shortly after 9 p.m. Michelle was not reported missing by her mother until the 13th of March 1992, since it was not unusual for Michelle's parents not to see her for a few days. On the following day, Michelle's body would be discovered by a staff member who worked at the local gun shop in Frankston. A staff member at the gun shop detected a strange odour emanating from a shed that was located on the property on March 14th. This prompted a heavy police investigation. The shed was situated on the Frankston Railway line side of the shop, approximately 300 metres away from the location of where Michelle had been requested to be picked up. Michelle's naked body was discovered in the shed, laying face down. Her clothes were laying next to her, and according to police, Michelle had visited the shed earlier that week to consume drugs, which was one of the reasons they suspected that she was murdered by someone or a group of people she may have known. An autopsy was unable to determine a cause of death, and sadly there isn't much information on Michelle's death or the injuries she received. Witnesses once told police several years after the murder that on that night that Ms. Brown was murdered, they saw a suspect arguing with a woman who matched her description. The police are appealing for any information from anyone who may have seen Michelle or anyone fitting her description at Frankston Railway Station or even the public telephone boxes between the hours of 8 and 9 p.m. on Sunday, the 1st of March 1992. They would also like to hear from anyone who noticed any suspicious or unusual activity in the area or even around Payne Street in Frankston, or any other activity at the rear of the gun shop on the vacant block that is behind it. Amanda Byrnes, a 23-year-old sex worker, was last seen alive in the early hours of Sunday the 7th of April in 1991. On the evening of Saturday the 6th of April, Amanda and her partner were getting ready to go to work in the area of St Kilda. Amanda's partner had a toothache and chose to stay at the flat while Amanda went out for work. She had planned to catch up with them a bit later that evening. Amanda was last seen by a friend at a phone box opposite the Shell service station on Barclay Street in St Kilda, before her partner went out to look for her, but was unable to find her. Amanda's partner returned home and reported her missing to the police. Sadly, the next day, Amanda's body was found by 2 friends walking the foreshore in Elwood. She was naked and had fatal head injuries. Despite a comprehensive investigation by the homicide squad over the past 30 years, no one has ever been charged with Amanda's murder, and the motives for this crime is still unknown. The police are urging anyone who may have seen Amanda on the night of Saturday the 6th of April, or even in the early hours of Sunday, to come forward with any information. Amanda was last seen wearing both a black lycra tube top and leggings. She also had a navy blue fleece zip-up top, which had drawstrings around the waist and on the hood. She had black suede stilettos, and she had black fingerless gloves. She was carrying a tan-coloured soft leather bag with a shoulder strap, but her clothes and bag have never been found, except for a single shoe which was discovered in Berkeley Street. Police suspect the involvement of a light-coloured Morris Mini panel van in Amanda's murder. A taxi driver reported hearing a loud bang that sounded like a vehicle collision around the same time that Amanda's partner was out searching for her. The taxi driver reported to police that he had witnessed this car driving erratically in Berkeley Street, and he claimed that there was a leg protruding from the vehicle. Later that same night, a security guard near Watley Watson Oval reported seeing the panel van enter the oval travelling at a high speed. Detectives believe that this light-coloured Morris Mini panel van was indeed involved in Amanda's abduction from the area of St Kilda. The panel van was last seen in the area where Amanda's body was discovered the following morning. There is currently a $1 million reward on offer for any information that can lead to an arrest or conviction of Amanda's killer. On the fateful evening of March 29, 1994, Samantha Mizzi was on her way to Brighton Road in St Kilda, where she was spotted by two witnesses talking with an unknown man. The identity of this man remains unknown to this very day, and it's unclear what the conversation entailed. The witnesses also reported seeing Samantha and this man walk towards Blanche Street in St Kilda after their brief conversation. Between 10 and 10:30 p.m. that night, residents in the area of St Kilda recall hearing a woman scream echoing through an otherwise quiet night. These screams were heard 3 to 4 times that evening and was loud enough to raise concern amongst the residents. The origin of these screams was never determined, but it's believed that they related to the events that ultimately led to the death of Samantha. It was around 11 p.m. that a passerby discovered Samantha in an unresponsive state amongst the tea tree bushes at the rear of the property in Brighton Road. Samantha was rushed to hospital, but despite the efforts of medical professionals, she sadly passed away. The details of Samantha's condition upon discovery were shocking and deeply disturbing. It was found that Samantha had suffered severe injuries as a result of being beaten with an object and subject to a violent sexual assault. Her assailant had stripped her of all of her clothing and left her to die. To add to the brutality of the attack, Samantha's belongings had also been stolen. The police initiated an extensive search of the area, hoping to find evidence that could lead to the identification of Samantha's attacker. Unfortunately, despite an extensive search, the weapon used in that fatal assault was never found. This makes the investigation into Samantha's murder all the more challenging, as it robs the investigators of a vital piece of evidence that could have led to the identification and subsequent apprehension of Samantha's murderer. The man seen talking with Samantha on the night of her murder remains a key person of interest in the investigation. He has been described as a Caucasian male between the ages of 40 and 45, standing approximately 182 centimeters tall, with a thin build, short grey hair which was parted to the left. At the time of the sighting, he was wearing a fawn-covered zip-up jacket and slacks. Despite numerous appeals for information, the man has never been identified and his whereabouts remain unknown. Samantha's murder remains one of the most horrendous crimes committed in St Kilda. The investigation into her murder remains ongoing, and the police are committed to bringing her killer to justice. A reward of $1 million is still on offer for any information that can lead to the arrest or conviction of Samantha's murderer. On Sunday, 21st of July 2013, Tracey Connelly, a sex worker, 40 years of age at the time, was found dead in her white van on Grievous Street in St Kilda. Her partner found her body and alerted the police. An autopsy would reveal that Tracey had suffered upper body and facial injuries, which led investigators to believe that she had been killed inside her van. Tracey had been living and working out of the van, which had been parked on Grieve Street in St Kilda for about a month prior to her death. The last confirmed sighting of Tracey was at 11:30 p.m. on Saturday, when she was seen on the corner of Mitchell and Carsley Street. After reviewing CCTV footage, detectives believe Tracey was killed between 1:15 and 2:28 a.m. on Sunday the 21st. Despite numerous public appeals for information over the years, no one has ever been charged in the connection with Tracey's death. A DNA sample, believed to belong to the perpetrator, was taken from the van, but it did not match anyone on the Victorian Police's database. About 1,500 people provided DNA samples for testing as part of the investigation, including those who had been in the St Kilda area at the time of Tracey's death, individuals with a history of violent crime in the area, and other registered sex offenders were also tested. Several DNA samples were also obtained from law enforcement agencies, both interstate and overseas. The officer in charge of the Homicide Squad detectives, Inspector Tim Day, stated that the DNA sample could be crucial in solving the case. He urged the offender to come forward and to speak with police, and added that anyone that chooses to speak to the police would be treated with confidentiality. Detectives also emphasised that the investigation remains active and solvable. There is currently a $1 million reward on offer, hoping to prompt someone to come forward with some information that can help lead police to Tracey's killer. The Victorian Police Homicide Squad remains dedicated in solving all of these cold cases, plus many more. If you have any information of any of these crimes, please contact the Victorian Police or the Victorian Crime Stoppers on the details provided. And until next time, stay safe out there.